That Putin threatened nuclear war on the West, I had to ask Jordan Peterson for his analysis on the war in Ukraine. His response was as grave as it was startling. That's the world's most famous psychologist, who began by asking for his view on Vladimir Putin as a man.
Well, he's a lot more like everybody else than anyone thinks. You know, the notion that he's Hitler or Stalin, that's just foolish. I don't see any evidence for that at all. I mean, first of all, Hitler and Stalin were very singular types. And
I see some evidence of Stalin in President Putin, because Putin to me is an ideologist who is very dedicated to his ideology, and I judge Putin to be the most dangerous man alive because I think he's willing to use nuclear weapons, and I don't think Biden is. So
there's a bit of Hitler and Stalin in everyone, so yeah, you know, there's some truth in that. Maybe there's more in the typical Russian leader.
A bit of Hitler
normal.
in everyone? Really?
Yeah, the dark side.
There's more than a bit.
The dark self, yeah. The shaitan is in us. The Satan is in us. So be careful and transform yourself, lest you let that darkness in you take hold, and then you become the devil yourself. There is no devil outside of the mirror. The real devil is in the mirror. I agree with Peterson. This is a mystical point.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, why would have Nazism spread the way it did? You know, people think, well, that's all top down. It's not top down.
No, it's not. And it's spreading in Sweden now. 20.5% the neo-Nazi, ex-neo-Nazi party has. And people are hating on Muslims in Sweden. So the darkness is in the human. I agree.
There's a part of people that are all these people who informed on Kate Berbalsingh.
Well, didn't Goebbels say that the way to get vast numbers of people to go along with what you want to do is to terrify them?
Yeah, well,
but you allow yourself to be terrified.
Oh, yeah, but...
And then, in a way, that's what Putin's now doing with the Russian people, where he's going back now into a position of they're all trying to get us, they want to attack us.
Yeah, but he has like 70 to 80% approval in Russia, so he's just forwarding the will of the Russian people, so the Russians are enabling him. Just like we are enabling the deep state. You know who is to blame for the deep state? We are. Because we don't want leaders who tell the truth. We want leaders who lie and are hypocritical to us, and that benefits people who have agendas, who give us a nice face, Biden, Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron, and all of these people. But behind closed doors, other people run the agenda, so we are to blame.
They want to take us over. He's terrifying his people to rally support for what at the moment is a conflict he has started, which is not going the way he assumed.
Well, the most... what would you say, the wisest commentators on totalitarian states, like Solzhenitsyn, and many psychological commentators, Jung was a good example of that, made a very straightforward case that you can't have a totalitarian state unless every single person is willing to lie about everything all the time. And you can think about that as top down, because the leaders lie too.
That's
and
the
they
West.
also enforce punishments if you don't lie. But then you can also think about it, the totalitarian spirit is replicated at every level of the society. And so in a truly totalitarian state, husbands lie to their wives and parents lie to their children. And the totalitarian state is actually the grip of the lie. And so, and people will certainly go along with that. I mean we're seeing that emerge here with cancel culture. It's like,
there you go. There you go. Peterson being so brilliant. He's totally brilliant in this interview.
Or else.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, well.
And the Russian people will be bombarded all the time with state media propaganda and will be buying into a lot of what Putin is saying.
Yeah.
How does this war end, do you think?
We're going to find out this winter. Well,
brilliant answer.
I know what I would do in his shoes.
I also know what I would do in his shoes, and that's the scary thing, because from a Russian point of view, this is an existential war. Russian media said that. This is an existential war, so Russia will not lose this war, and that makes them quite dangerous. What's my opinion? A peace deal. We should have negotiated a Minsk II type of agreement, Russia-Ukraine peace, no war, no fighting, but obviously people didn't want that. Let's continue.
I'd wait till the first cold snap and shut off the taps.
Right.
Well,
because
of course he's going to do that.
That's already happening.
Of course he's going to do that. He's already warned the West with his insistence that maintenance problems were necessary and the pipelines had to be shut down.
And the economic warfare with gas and oil, it started before the invasion of Ukraine. It already started 2011 with prices going up. So I think this economic warfare with gas is well planned in advance by the Kremlin.
Use a nuclear weapon.
If necessary, he'll use a tactical. Problems were necessary and the pipelines had
Do
to
you
be
think he
shut
will
down.
use a nuclear weapon?
Yep.
If necessary, he'll use a tactical battlefield weapon.
Even
Yes.
if it starts
And-
World War III?
It won't. Probably.
Why? Because we...
And that scares me. I think Putin is psychologically capable of doing that, and that makes him a quite terrifying person, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it if you don't want to.
wouldn't respond?
What's in it for us?
If you let him do it and get away with it, where does that end? Then you are into a hit
Well,
analogy.
look, there's you can get yourself in a situation, no problem, where there's no good outcome.
Yeah.
We're trying to do that right now.
A Nash equilibrium where there's only bad outcomes. They nuke, we nuke, everyone nukes, and it's over. And let's pray to Allah that that doesn't happen.
On every front we can possibly imagine. We can easily get ourselves in a situation where it's hell this way and hell that way.
Yep.
That's highly probable.
Well, should the Ukrainians give the Russians anything? When I was over there recently interviewing President Zelensky, what I was struck by was everybody I met in Kyiv, the capital city, were utterly resolute. Don't give them an inch of our land.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to that because I don't know what the preconditions for peace might be. But I do know that naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win, I just don't understand.
No.
I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly?
Well, I guess a victory...
Well, they are trying to pour as much weapons into Ukraine as possible. I got banned for speaking about this on TikTok. I hope this doesn't happen to this YouTube channel. They are trying to humiliate Russia to lose. And that's very dangerous. A people who get humiliated that have nuclear weapons is...
be that the Russians retreated from Ukraine.
With Ukrainian ruins.
Right.
Well,
With large
okay,
parts of
fine.
it.
That's a hell of a victory. Like, I think Putin could manage that because I think he could tell his people, and I think they might buy it. It's like, we accomplished our objective. We devastated Ukraine and we kept it out of the hands of the West. And that's not great. It's not what we'd hoped for, but it's better than the alternative. And I think they would buy that. And I think when Putin went into Ukraine, I thought...
I'm not sure.
Well, I thought a bunch of things, which I made a YouTube video about that. People criticized like mad. I thought, okay, well, what's happening?
And I saw his YouTube video, and I've followed this war every day. I think Peterson's analysis of this war was spot on.
Happening here? Oh, I see. His end game for failure is that Ukraine is left in a smoking ruin. Oh, that's a victory. So then he can lose with impunity.
Right.
So how can we win? We
There's
can't
no
win
winning
against Vladimir Putin anyways, because you cannot win against someone you cannot say no to.
Yep.
Period.
And you cannot win against someone who has 5,900 nuclear weapons because you're hoping that Russia doesn't go all in. The only way, and this is why this war doesn't make sense to me, Ukraine, when they are fighting Russia, they are hoping that Russia will not go all in. Because if they go all in, it's game over. You can't win against an opponent that you hope that they play timid warfare with you. They have so far, they have done some really horrible things that I completely reject, that are crimes against humanity, which is completely detestable and disgusting. But Russia can go harder in. And they will likely go harder in with the 300,000 troops and maybe even use more powerful weapons. Now, why do you go to war against an enemy that has the potential to use nuclear weapons? And why do you try to corner Russia and humiliate them, almost to force them to use a nuke? I think this is a very dangerous strategy. Very dangerous strategy.
And we can't say no to Putin because we sold our soul for his oil and gas.
True.
And we did that to elevate our moral stature in relationship to saving the planet. And so
True.
Here we are,
Yeah.
facing a very dire winter, hoisted on the petard of our own foolishness and moral presumption. We're saving the planet. We'll see. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it to me. And this is the most catastrophic issue here. Assuming that we're facing an environmental crisis of planetary proportions, which is not something I buy, by the way. Assuming we are, well, then I would imagine that you would put in place measures that would ameliorate that problem instead of exacerbating it. But all the measures you're putting in place are actually making the environmental problem worse. So how is that even vaguely acceptable? And I look at that and I think, oh, I see. It's just like George Orwell said about middle-class socialists 50 years ago. It's not that you love the planet, it's that you hate humanity. So, well, have at it.
Orwellian nightmare.
And we'll see what happens this winter. And it's very terrifying to me.
It is.
I especially hear
It is.
You know, because your energy prices have gone way out of control, and that's going to hurt a lot of poor people, and
Africa.
certainly around the world as well. The World Bank already estimated that we've put 350 million people into what they call food insecurity.
Africa.
350 million. That's 3 times as many as the communists managed to kill. Maybe we can manage that in a winter. But the planet has too many people on it anyway, so you know,
the
that's
deep
just
state
poor
agenda.
people.
Nothing to add. Jordan Peterson just being super brilliant in this interview. You don't have to agree with Peterson in everything. I don't agree with everything he says. But hell, you don't agree with everything I say. You can never agree with everything that a person says. It's so nice to see this psychology that Peterson shows. He has some Jungian ideas in it, very in line with mysticism. I just think we have people pushing very, very dangerous agendas when it comes to Russia. And I fear that if you try to corner Russia or humiliate them, they will use more powerful weapons. And the winter is going to be tough. We are going to have very high utility prices. And we already have some 12% or crazy like that inflation. 10 to 12% inflation is crazy. So, it's a brilliant interview by Peterson. Hopefully this was interesting.